I always say that, I love the change of seasons,
Yeah.
right? I like when we go from winter to spring to summer to fall, and fall's around the corner. So all's good in the world. Hey, on today's show, we want to talk about something we call the Retire Right program. Now, this is a flashback from our radio days, right? So just for full disclosure, Jason and I did a radio show for about 4 years on local radio here. And I'll never forget, we were doing a show years and years and years ago. And I remember saying to Jason, there's only two ways to retire. There's the retire right way, and there's the retire wrong way. And if you think about the big decisions in a person's life, right? So what are the big decisions? So the first big decision is, who am I going to marry? That's a big decision, right? Better make that decision right, hopefully.
Got that right.
The second big decision is, we're going to have how many kids? We're going to have 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids, whatever. What can we afford? Big decision. And the third big decision is, when I retire, how's this going to work, right? So what we've done here is we've actually come up with about 6 key, strategies, or 6 key templates that you should think about when it comes to planning for that retirement distribution time. So Jason, the first one here that, when you're talking to your advisor and you're thinking about retirement is, really sit down and identify your mortality, right? So if you're 60, 65 years old, one of the questions you want to ask yourself is, hey, based on the money I have, what's the risk of me outliving my capital? What's my potential life expectancy? One of the questions I always ask clients is, how old were your parents when they died? Were your parents 72, 75, 90, 105? So it's important that when you start thinking about retirement is, okay, I'm 60 years old now, but what does it look like, when it comes to my mortality?
Yeah, and it used to be that you retire at 65 and life expectancy was till 75. So it was a 10-year a 10-year commitment to find your retirement income. Nowadays, it's more people want to retire earlier and they're living longer. So, it could be 30, 40 years of retirement.
Well, it's a great point. I mean, if you came in here and said to me, I'm 65, I want to retire, and, your mortality was 80, we've only got a plan for 15 years. But if you come in here at 52, and I've had many people come in here in their early 50s and they said, hey, I want to retire. Yeah, but you've got a house still, you've got a mortgage, you've got 2 kids at home, and you could live to be 100. That's 48 years. Is there enough capital put aside to live to that lifespan, right?
Yeah, retirement can be longer than actually a working period at some point.
Years, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, another thing that we look at is, what does your life look like in retirement? What are some of the key components or key factors? Number one is inflation. It's a big issue these days. Typically, we used to say 2-3%, but nowadays we're looking, what was inflation number? 7% not long ago. So it's the number one issue, and it's usually the most overlooked part of the retirement planning. What is your lifestyle in retirement? Are you traveling? Are you just playing golf? Are you just comfortable with just being at home? But it's important to understand, what does life look like at retirement? Creating a budget for retirement, not just what are your expenses going to be? Do you still have a mortgage? Like I said, do you want to set aside X amount of dollars for traveling or for a golf membership? So again, it's really important to create a budget of expenses and reviewing your debt obligations. We try as hard as you can to eliminate all the debts going into retirement. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's really important to and again, with rising interest rates, if you've got a line of credit or have a mortgage, it's really important to review those debt obligations as you get close to retirement.
Well, you know what? You made a great point here. What does your life look like in retirement? And, if you needed $50,000 a year and we're living in a 7 to 8% inflationary time, next year you need 54,000, then you need 58,000. It becomes an effect on your portfolio. And like you said, Jason, lifestyle, right? I mean, how many people, they come in here and they say, I want to retire and spend 4 months in Florida. Well, okay, do you have the reserves built up for that? And again, create the budget. I always say to people that traditionally, if you look at Canada pension and old age pension, if both you and your wife are getting Canada pension and old age pension, depending on the incomes you earn during your working career, you might have between $2,000 and $3,000 of base income coming in. Well, that base income is enough to cover the basic cost, right? So again, create the budget. Do you want 3,000, 4,000, 5,000? One of the things we're finding right now in retirement that people are looking into are these reverse mortgages, Jason, because a lot of people maybe aren't where they want to be. Maybe they've had a job layoff, they've had to put multiple kids through university, and the cost of that is going through the roof. So again, in retirement, if you want a big lifestyle, maybe you want to look at a reverse mortgage. The question too is, it's pretty sexy to own foreign ownership of U.S. property, or maybe down in the Caribbean. Do you want to own property down in the Caribbean or the U.S.? I mean, that comes at an additional cost. And a person who says, hey, I just want to go and maybe spend three or 4 weeks down in Florida. And the other thing in your retirement is that you want to look at your benefits, because again, most people are used to going to the dentist, getting their teeth cleaned, getting their cavities filled. They've got a health and drug plan. If they retire prior to 65, they won't have a health and dental plan in most cases. So make sure you do review your company benefit plan upon your retirement. And also too, Jason, one of the big things here is the out of country coverage, right? Is if you decide to spend 3 or 4 months in Florida in retirement, do you have the ability to get out of country coverage, and can you afford it, right? Is there any pre-existing conditions that potentially puts you at risk? So those are some really great points. The third category here when it comes to the Retire Right program is generating income in retirement. So again, like you just said, you create the budget. What's the Canada pension strategy? Are you going to be doing, taking it early? Are you going to be doing it later in life? What about bridging workplace pensions? I know a lot of people that retired from GM, they retired, they get a bridging of their pensions. There's potentially old age clawbacks right now in this country around $80,000. If you make $80,000 at 65 or older, they start to claw back your old age pension. And then of course at about 130,000 of income, is completely clawed back. So again, looking at your income bucket, and then of course looking at some tax efficient investment strategies helps as well.
Yeah, it's super important. The same idea of investing, to make sure that you get proper advice on tax efficiency of your investing on the way out. It's really important to find the most tax efficient way to generate income.
Exactly. A few last points here too is, when you go into generating income in retirement is, you got to look at income splitting with your spouse. There's a pension credit right now for those over the age of 65. Again, most advisors should talk about that, but if you're over the age of 65, you can take $2,000 out of your RIF. It's a non-taxable benefit. Again, other issues when it comes to income in retirement is looking at spouses when it comes to setting up your RIF payments. Do you want to use your age? Do you want to use your spouse's age? There's the final contribution, Jason, at age 71 for those that maybe at 71 make that last contribution. Of course, there's also some RSP carry forward room, and there's future inheritances. So when it comes to your income and finding income, I mean, there's multiple different buckets that people have to think about. It isn't just, I want to retire, I need 4,000 and it's done. There's a lot of questions that go into it.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, the previous generation, it was just you get your CPP, you'll get your old age security, and you'll have your pension. Nowadays, with pensions, not so many pensions these days. It's becoming a bit more of a tax. You have to have a good strategy on finding that efficient way to get to your income.
Yeah, exactly. The fourth component here in the Retire Right program is building the portfolio. So again, we made some points here. One is the investment risk analysis. So as I always say to clients, there's 5 categories of risk. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Depending on what your risk tolerance is, your returns are going to be reflective. So it's important that with your advisor, whoever you're working with, your wealth advisors, you understand what risk category you're in. Also, too, how to structure income, right? So yeah, do you take your Canada pension early? Do you defer it? Do you take your RSPs early, your RIF early? Do you defer it? Do you draw from your TFSA, your open account? Do you draw from potentially other asset classes? So there's different ways, Jason, that people have to start thinking about when it comes to their portfolio. And as I always say too, is that, in your 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s, those are your growth years, right? You want to grow your portfolio. Maybe you take a bit more aggressive approach, but later in the cycle, in your mid-60s, your 70s, your 80s, maybe your approach is more, wealth preservation as opposed to wealth accumulation.
Well, exactly, and that kind of leads into the next part, which is your investment choices in retirement. We see it a lot in our practice that people have exactly the same portfolio that they did 10, 20, 30 years ago, but when you're getting closer to retirement, you should or might want to be a little bit less aggressive. So it's important to review those on a regular basis.
Yep. And the one big thing with that is that, the question is the level of volatility you can handle, right? So when you're not drawing income out of your portfolio, it's okay to have the ups and the downs because they typically all work out. But when you're taking out 20, 30, 40,000 and the market's gone down for a couple of years, you're drawing out more capital. So building a portfolio is important. And the last point here too is investment leverage. I mean, a lot of people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s will take on debt, take on leverage. Maybe they'll buy multiple properties. They'll do things. Later in the cycle, hey, you know what? It's okay to maybe take that off the table and maybe protect yourself on the downside. The fifth area here on the Retire Right program is estate planning and preservation. And again, we go back to this, is make sure you have life insurance. Trust me, I don't know anyone who's 65 years of age today that doesn't wish they had more life insurance in their portfolio, at least more insurance that will continue on for years and years and years. I've had a lot of clients that have bought term life insurance for the right reasons. It's a great product, but then they get to be in their 70s and that term policy is renewing where it's unaffordable. They no longer can afford it, and the insurance is going to be gone. So look at insurance when the estate planning side comes into the plan. Look at charitable givings. Look at your legacy wishes. Look at long-term care and potentially healthcare costs. So again, sitting down, that's a whole conversation, Jason, on its own.
Yeah, the long-term care and the healthcare costs, you mentioned it earlier. If you're losing your benefits at age 65, what happens if you need some dental work? What happens if you need a prescription that isn't necessarily covered? So there's a lot of... And long-term care, I mean, that's, again, we talked about longevity. There's a chance that you might have to go to a long-term care home, into your 80s and 90s. So how are you going to find the money for those things?
Exactly. And the final stage here in the whole Retire Right program for you and your spouse is the legal side of it, right? So on the legal side of it, make sure, I'm sure most people, a lot of folks don't have wills in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. They get wills in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, but make sure you've got your wills in place. Make sure you've got your powers of attorney in place. Make sure you've picked the right executor, Jason. This is a big thing people kind of forget about. They pick an executor 20 years ago. Maybe it was a brother, a cousin, an uncle, and that person maybe isn't even here anymore. They're gone, right? They've passed on. So make sure you've got your executor in place. Again, if you've got some wealth, there's some trust planning you can do. You can look at multiple trusts if you have a large amount of wealth. Another key point here too is having a disabled child. So taking care of a child after death. Obviously, there's the Henson Trust, there's the RDSP, there's other options. You can leave money to a disabled child. And the final point here, Jason, on the legal side is the business interest. It's the ownership. If you're out there right now and you've got a business, make sure you've got your agreements in place with your employees. Maybe you've got a buy-sell agreement in place. And again, to make sure you've got a succession plan for your business. So, a lot of business owners out there that are professionals, the vast majority of their wealth is inside their business, where the average person, the vast majority of their wealth is inside their investments, their RSPs and their stocks. So at the end of the day, Jason, identify your mortality, look at your life in retirement, generating income in retirement, make sure your plans are in place there. Make sure you've got the right portfolio. Make sure you've got the proper estate plan. And then, of course, having the legal plan to wrap it up. So lots of things go into to setting themselves up for a good future and a good retirement.
Exactly. And don't come 6 months before you're thinking or ready to retire. Talk to your advisor 3 years, 5 years, 10 years before you're contemplating.
This is a conversation that if you look at the amount of content that's in this structure, this is a good hour or 2 hour conversation with a client and a family. And again, getting all the information as an advisory team, making notes, making decisions, asking questions, and then come back with a bit of a written game plan so that you don't make any mistakes. So Jason Pollock, again, thanks for coming on to the show. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
See you in a couple of weeks. And for those out there, feel free to share the podcast.